The meeting is live streaming when you're ready.
We are good. Okay, so I will call to order the council meeting for Monday, April 25th. It's a regular meeting of council at 6:30 p.m. And I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Algonquin speaking people. I am going to do a quick roll call because we have 6 of 7 of us in chambers this evening. The only councillor who is not in chambers this evening is Councillor Baxter. Councillor Baxter, I do see you online. Could you just acknowledge you can hear us and you're available?
Yes, I can hear you and I can talk to you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, moving on to 2, approval of the agenda. So I'm looking for a recommendation that the near-term and long-term agendas be received and that the agenda of the regular council meeting for April 25th, 2022 be adopted as amended. Are there any objections to the approval of the agenda? Councillor Day.
Sorry, I just heard you say as amended. What is the amendment?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just reading off of this. I did not mean to say as amended. Or did I? Did we amend this? I think it was just staff prepared speaking notes for me, and so it was in there. So I apologize. There's nothing amended.
Thank you. And I just have a question on the report of public hearing when you get to it.
Okay. Sorry, where are you talking about, Councillor Day? Oh,
that's on the report.
I'm sorry. So I'm looking at, I'm on 2 right now. So the near term, long term, and regular council meeting agenda. So I'm looking for the approval of the agenda. Are you wishing to speak to that?
No.
Okay. Okay, then I will look to, if there's no errors or changes, then I will, seeing no objections, then I will state that it is approved by unanimous consent. Moving on next to mayor's message. The only thing I'd just like to share is I was very fortunate last week that I had a couple opportunities to go to a couple events. The first was I was able to attend the Scenic on Tuesday evening. Scenic asked for me to just do a quick presentation just about the work that we're doing from an environmental standpoint. And so I was able to share with them some information as well. I will share it with this council as well. That same day, I also had a meeting with Minister Cullen. In that call, it was all the mayors of Vancouver Island, all the mayors of the North, and all the mayors of the East. So basically excluding Lower Vancouver. And we were basically just, we spent an hour and a half just discussing the environmental issues that are occurring within the province right now. So for example, there was discussion that right now they're in the North, the snowpack is at 135% levels, and that at 150%, that will create significant flooding, as well as if we see a very fast melt off, could be a real concern. And so there was discussions about how the province was planning on mitigating those things. As well, there was a significant discussion in regards to this Fire Start program, and that the province really began to messaging that the province is now looking back at the municipalities for leadership on what would be the best way to mitigate fire within their jurisdictions versus it being coordinated at the provincial level. So it was a very interesting conversation. Just for Vancouver Island, just so everybody knows, we are at 78% of snowpack averages. So it's significantly down to previous years. So hopefully we will not be seeing the flooding that has occurred, but of course we never know with our atmospheric rivers and heat domes and so on. And then on Wednesday evening, I had the pleasure of presenting at the Greater Victoria Housing Association. It was their AGM, and I will have to say that Colwood looked spectacular in comparison to the Greater Victoria Housing Society has projects in Saanich, Victoria, Esquimalt, and Colwood. And they talked significantly about 330 Goldstream and about 84 Belmont. And those two housing numbers are significantly higher than what is happening in other jurisdictions. And so it definitely looked that we were actually being very proactive and just looked really good during that. And that was a great presentation. And then on Friday, I had the pleasure of attending the recognition ceremony for Scenic on the residents who won the Environmental Stewardship Award. The honorable mentions were London Drugs and Royal Roads University, and the couple, I'm going to be embarrassed, I cannot for the life of me think of the couple's names right now, but thank you. It was the St. Pierre's, that's right. And the work that they had done at Victoria Creek. And it was very, it was a ceremony that clearly they appreciated, and I think we all benefited from as a city. So those were the things that sort of happened within the city in the last couple of weeks. And that's all I have to share. Moving on to adoption and receipt of minutes. Looking for adoption for the regular council meeting minutes of April 11th. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Day. Is there discussion? Seeing none. Councillor Jansen, can you do me a favor and can you be the person who watches Councillor Baxter's hands too? Because sometimes I do miss the person online. And Councillor Baxter, please speak up if I do miss you at times. I forget to look up. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any in opposition? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor. No. So we are just on the regular council meeting minutes of April 11th. Any in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to receipt for the report of the public hearing. Councillor Day.
Thank you. On the report of the public hearing, there are a number of members of the public who did not reside in Colwood who spoke. And I noted that none of the addresses were filled out as to what jurisdiction they live in. And I think there were a number of irregularities at that meeting in terms of time allowed for speaking. And I really thought that we were going to have a new public hearing because of that. And I just find it difficult to have input from the public in Colwood about our official community plan and specific development plans within Colwood, where there's no clarity in terms of whether or not people have a vested interest in what happens in Colwood, or an understanding of where our official community plan has come from and how it's developed specifically to value the environment.
Thank you. This is in, right now we are at the report of public hearing. So I do need a motion that the report of public hearing held March 24th be received. Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Councillor Dick.
Could staff please explain why the irregularities at the public hearing did not warrant a new public hearing?
I can speak to that through the mayor.
Sure.
So when we did the public hearing, it followed process, and some of the feedback that we received after the public hearing, we reviewed it and analyzed it with our municipal solicitor to ensure that it did follow process correctly, as well as to ensure that no new information was released or would affect the application and process. And we've determined that there is no impact to process, to the bylaw itself, and that there's no additional information. So therefore we recommend to proceed without another public hearing. There is no requirements to hold another one at this time.
So even though the proponents were given more time than the members of the public were given?
Standard policy is that it is a 10-minute presentation, and it did go over, that's true. But there was also a third call for speaking from the public, and nobody took an opportunity to speak for a third time. So there was opportunity for the public to speak if they needed to.
So the time limits, it's all right to enforce those on the residents, but not enforce them on the developer.
That's something that staff took into consideration, and that going forward will ensure that we stay within that parameter.
But we didn't.
That's right, he did go over a bit, yes.
So it doesn't seem like there's any consequence to not following the rules.
May I respond?
May.
Whether it's at a council meeting or a committee meeting or at a public meeting, during the meeting, if a member of committee or council feels that there is a point of order should be raised relative to how the meeting is run, that is the time in which to raise that issue. Subsequently, the particular issues that were brought up were reviewed first by staff and then secondly reviewed by our solicitor. Staff are confident no additional public hearing is required in this instance, and the bylaw is not at a risk because of the nature of how the public hearing was held, nor new information after it. But I would encourage you during meetings or during public hearings, if you feel that there's a matter that isn't following proper process, to raise a point of order during that meeting.
Thank you. There also has been no mention of the very large petition that was presented long before the public hearing has not been mentioned or quantified in the public hearing or afterwards.
Sorry, was there a question?
The question is, why was the petition that was presented to council not mentioned in any of the reports?
I don't believe there was a petition submitted during the public hearing process. The public hearing process is a culmination of information from the applicant and from the city, and we provide opportunity for all members of the public. Given all that information, we bring that together and council listens. Had there been a petition presented, it would have been formed part of the public hearing.
The petition had already been presented, so it would appear that there's absolutely no point in presenting a petition from the citizens of Colwood that it has no impact.
So I guess I'm going to interrupt in that we are discussing the report of the public hearing and if we should receive the minutes of the public hearing. I think Mr. Earl has responded that we would have recorded the petition had it been mentioned during the public hearing. So I'm not,
It was
in regards to
mentioned.
this item, I'm not sure how you would like us to move that forward. Like if this is in regards to the report of the public hearing.
I do believe the petition was mentioned at the public hearing
Okay,
by Kim Jordison.
okay, so it was mentioned.
Yes.
Okay, and so, but
So
sorry,
I'm
did you not just
asking-
say that it was not mentioned and that it wasn't reported, but you're just telling me it was reported?
No, it's not in the minutes of the public hearing, but it was
Okay, so
mentioned.
it's in regards to it being recorded in the minutes of the public hearing is what you're requesting?
So the public hearing is an opportunity for input from the public. It is the last opportunity for input. There was far earlier a petition presented with many signatures. The exact number eludes me, but 1,400 or 1,500 signatures on the petition. That was brought to council. It would appear that there is no result from that petition. It was mentioned at the public hearing. And it just doesn't appear to have been taken into account.
Okay.
Your worship, if I may, there's a large volume of material that informed this process as it evolved, including the petition that's mentioned, including materials from the applicant. And all of that formed and changed the various reports as they moved through our process. So I'm confident that the materials affected the process.
Well, I would doubt your judgment on that. Thank you.
Oh, I actually found that remark inappropriate, Councillor Day. To be in a public forum to be questioning our CAO is inappropriate. You're not allowed to make accusatory statements. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd like to make a comment on this too. And if I don't, I won't be able to speak for myself, to tell you the truth. You know, I do agree with some of the points that have been made by Councillor Day on this issue. What I find, and I'd like an answer to this question right now from corporate services. What I found out is, I mean, this is after the fact. It wasn't during, because I don't know who all of the people that are speaking out, you know, in the public are, who they're speaking on behalf of. You can almost gather, I guess, I should have figured this out, but it was hard for me to determine. But when people are employees, and so in fact, not only did the proponent get more than his fair share of time, then there were some speakers that were in the public that were speaking on behalf of the proponent. So in fact, it's an accumulation of time, because, you know, you have, you know, people that are very good speakers, communicators, marketing people, salespeople, whatever, and then they're doing their 5-minute bit. So in fact, that time is even more extended. So I just find that just, I don't know what the ruling on that is. It just doesn't seem fair to me. I just find that very, you know, I just don't like it. I didn't like it. You know, I mean, we didn't really get to hear from the public, you know, because we cut them off, and yet we let the proponent have, you know, to me, as much time as they wanted, because people kept on being able to speak on behalf of the proponent. Anyways, I don't even understand. Can you maybe explain that to me and how that's supposed to work? You know, I can understand if there's truly people in the public that live in Colwood and they're saying, yes, I agree with this, fine. You know, they get their 5-minute, but when there's people that are in the public that don't live in Colwood and in fact are employees of the proponent, I don't think that's fair.
So if I can respond through you, Your Worship, the process is that anybody who wants to speak during the public hearing must provide their name and address. Staff don't determine whether or not they have a conflict. That's something that we would not know. So they're all entitled to have the 2 minutes. They're given 3 opportunities to speak. And yes, some people were cut off at the 2 minutes, but then they were provided another opportunity to speak at second call. And then at third call, I believe nobody wanted to speak at that point. So everybody did have an opportunity to speak. They could have spoke again if they would like to, and they did not.
Yes, I do understand that, but I guess it's a fairness issue to me. It just doesn't seem right to me in my own head that you have the proponent who did a good job in doing the presentation, although they overran, but then to have people that are employees of the proponent get up and speak. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. Is that what the answer is?
We cannot limit people who want to come up and speak. I would not try and stop anybody. It's for the public to be heard. That's the purpose of the public hearing. And it doesn't specify it has to be the public from Colwood specifically, the public.
Okay, thanks very much.
I'm going to go to Councillor Logan, then Jansen, then I do see your hand, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. I gotta admit, I'm a bit frustrated by the tone of the conversation today.
I want to say I appreciate the review that staff have done, and I will take the word of our professional staff all day long, every day of the week. And I appreciate the work that they've done to review the public hearing. First of all, the second point I want to make is that the real test for me is, were the public cut off, or did the public have their voice stymied during the public hearing? The answer is no. Marcy was clear that at third call for discussion, not one person got up. So to tell me that people's voices were stymied because maybe the applicant went over by 2 minutes or 3 minutes, that's stupid. I'm sorry. What are we trying to accomplish here? And the other thing too is,
Councillor Logan, I appreciate your passion.
well,
but, hold on.
I do apologize. I
Excuse me.
apologize if I offended my colleague. That was not my intent. That's my frustration. I do withdraw that. The other comment I will say that is that never have we received a package summarizing, summarizing all the correspondence that we've received over the course of the application's life, whether it's an email, petition, whatever. We've never received that for a public hearing. And so I'm just a bit flummoxed about why we're even having this conversation after staff gave us some pretty clear advice after a careful review. And the public was not cut off at any point or restricted from having any conversation or comment during the public hearing. So I'm sorry, I'm a bit offended as well by this conversation, and I apologize to my colleagues if I've offended them.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen, then Baxter, and then Councillor Kobayashi for a second time. No, sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate what some council members are saying. I watched that video today in its entirety, and it didn't appear to me that anybody got cut off at any point in time. Yes, because some were forced to come back a second time. No one, I can confirm, nobody did step up for the third call. I just watched it this afternoon. The other part to that is it's an unreasonable. I don't believe there's any statutory authority for us to clarify who works where and what the family associations are and the connection possibly between a developer and someone who's speaking at a public hearing. But I myself, I mean, I listen to these things objectively, and I think it's pretty clear. You can tell perhaps by the tone of the speaker who might be an employee or who isn't, or who might have been motivated, you know, to come and speak. And, you know, so I do that distillation myself, and I'm not surprised that proponents do their due diligence and have as many people come forward as possible. I expect that. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I just want to try and say this very, very clearly, and maybe it has been said clearly, but I want to make sure it's been said extremely clearly. The city has no right to deny anybody the opportunity to speak at a public hearing. If Vladimir Putin himself wants to turn up and speak at the hearing, we cannot deny him. And we have no right to inquire into the motivations of anybody speaking at a public hearing. And that should be the end of that discussion, and I hope it will be. But I also think that we need to say that an error was made at the public hearing in that the developer was not held to the time that we would normally hold a developer to. On the other hand, there is absolutely no rule about public hearings that says if anybody goes over time, then the public hearing is null and void. And certainly in the circumstances, I don't think that would be a sensible rule if it did exist. because as other members have pointed out, the last opportunity to speak was given to the public for a third round, and the public could have said as many things as they could each fit into the 2 minutes they were allowed for the third time to argue against the developer. But I think it's also important to note that, like every other organization in the history of the world, the city will make the odd mistake. It's not the end of the world, and I don't believe it's changed a thing, but it is something that people who oppose the development will tend to bring up, and they have a right to bring it up. But it is not something that negates the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to speak because I only have second-time speakers asking to speak now. I will take responsibility for allowing the speaker to go past 10 minutes. It clearly was my responsibility to manage the time. My logic was to let the person go because they were only going to have one opportunity. I was prepared to stay here to midnight. And if people were going to stand up and speak during third reading and they wish to speak 4 or 5 times, they had that right. I was not intending on limiting anyone's ability to continue to talk until there was no one wishing to speak at the public hearing. When I made the third call, there was no one wishing to come back up to the mic. And just for clarification, everybody's talking 2 minutes. It was during public hearing, it's 5 minutes. And I want to be clear, the reason I stayed strict on the 5 minutes was not to limit the individual speaking, but it was to allow others an opportunity to speak. So I wasn't attempting to try and limit what anyone was saying. What I was trying to do was give everybody an opportunity to say something before we came around a second and allow people to speak a second time. So it certainly was never meant to be a limiting factor. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you very much for your explanation on that. And and I accept Councillor Logan's his apology. Just trying to remember the first principles of leadership: focus on the situation or problem, not the people. And therefore, my first reaction is when I push this button, I got mad. So I'll probably unpush this button. But clearly, Ms. Lalonde has answered my question. I just thought it's just a strange way of doing public hearings. But my understanding, if that is the precedence, that's the way we do it. You answered my question. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that I won't be supporting the adoption of this report. And my reasoning is that I don't believe that the public hearing is the place where we should be putting the developer first and the citizens second. Thank you.
Sorry, should have my mic on. So this is for the to receive the report of the public hearing. Those in opposition, Councillor Day and Councillor Kobayashi oppose. The motion passes. Moving on to public participation. Ms. Lalonde, do we have anyone online?
We do not have anybody registered to speak.
Is there anyone in chambers wishing to speak? Because I don't want to have to read my public participation during this unless anyone's going to. No? Okay. Just, yeah, okay. It does not look like we have anyone. I'm not trying to limit you. You're going to speak to an item. Okay. Great. Then we have no public participation. So that will move us on to 6, new business. Desiree Gibbons, our planner. This is in regards to rezoning application, amended application for 365 Latoria. Ms. Gibbons.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm just going to share my screen. Are you able to see my screen okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the item before you is an application for a rezoning text amendment for the CD28 zone. This is for the lands at 365 Latoria Boulevard in the Latoria South neighborhood. Staff are recommending that amendments be made to Area 2 of the CD28 zone, specifically that item 2A be removed, which only permits retail stores on the first story of a building fronting the northern parcel line of Area 2. And also removing item 2B, which prohibits professional medical office uses on the first story of a mixed-use building fronting a street. And then revising that to allow ground floor medical and professional offices in buildings fronting common street only. Staff are also recommending that the amending bylaw be brought back for first, second, third reading and adoption. So the proposal is to build a 4-story mixed-use building at the corner of Commons Road and Dunlin Street in the Latoria South area of Royal Bay. The top 3 floors of the building will be residential, and the ground floor will be a mix of residential, or will be a mix of retail and office uses. So for context, the site is located at 365 Latoria Boulevard, which is zoned as Comprehensive Development 28 or CD28 and is designated as Seaside Village in the OCP. The subject site is in Area 2 of the CD28 zone, which permits a variety of commercial and residential uses, including medical and professional offices. However, the CD28 zone prohibits professional and medical offices on the ground floor of a mixed-use building fronting a street or fronting the northern parcel line of Area 2. The official community plan designates the lands as Seaside Village, which is envisioned to be one of Colwood's 2 primary centers that supports a range of commercial, retail, institutional, and residential uses. A form and character development permit will be required to enable the development of the subject property. The subject parcel is also within the Commons neighborhood of the Royal Bay Area Plan. The Commons is envisioned to be a vibrant commercial and residential village which supports Royal Bay residents in meeting their daily needs by foot. It also aims to provide local employment opportunities, expand the city's tax base, and respond to market conditions. As well, the subject parcel is within Area 2 of the Latoria South Sub-Area Plan, which is considered to be a mixed-use area. Mixed-use areas encourage a pedestrian-oriented retail street. They also support neighborhood residential, commercial services, and amenity spaces. Area 2 of the Latoria South Sub-Area Plan is intended to complement the adjacent retail core just across the street from this subject parcel, and it's intended to bring in a population mass that will support the commercial viability of the area. The northern parcel line of Area 2, which runs along Commons Road, is intended to support a pedestrian-oriented street enclosure with a mix of land uses such as ground floor retail with commercial and residential above. The sub-area plan also includes design guidelines, which are specific to the consideration of development proposals within the Commons. Specific to this application, the design guidelines state that any building fronting Common Street must provide an active street frontage, meaning that the ground floor uses of the building will engage the street life and enhance the public realm. The guidelines encourage this by requiring street-facing buildings to include features such as large front windows, continuous overhead weather protection, and high-quality signage, which is creative, colorful, and coordinates with the character of the area. So the applicant's requesting an amendment to the zone to permit professional and medical offices on the ground floor of a mixed-use building fronting Common Street. The applicant has seen significant interest from medical and professional offices to lease space in the Commons Retail Village, which is located across from the subject property. However, because there will not be enough space to accommodate these offices in the retail village, the applicant is hoping to accommodate some of those offices within the subject parcel instead. As mentioned earlier, Area 2 of the CD28 zone prohibits professional medical offices from being located on the first story of a ground floor building, and this was to help ensure that a pedestrian-oriented retail street could be achieved. Staff reasoned that medical and professional offices would not be able to achieve an active street frontage. However, Council may wish to consider recommending that the zoning be amended, since the applicant has indicated that they will work closely with the City of Colwood throughout the development permit process to ensure that the form and character of the building will still meet the design goals and the intent of the OCP. Area plans as well as the area plans by creating an inviting and aesthetically pleasing main street that will achieve an active street frontage along Commons Road. The applicant is here tonight to speak to their application, and they have also provided several examples within their presentation tonight that show how professional medical offices can achieve an active street frontage, as well as incorporate design elements that are consistent with other retail shops. In addition, the applicant has also indicated that they are prepared to register a Section 219 covenant, if necessary, to ensure that the professional medical offices at the street level will include design elements that achieve active frontage that is consistent with other retail uses. As per council policy, a notification sign was installed on the property in late March. And with the recently amended legislation, council has the option to not require a public hearing for proposals that are consistent with the OCP. If council chooses to waive the public hearing requirement, the public must be notified prior to the date of the amending bylaw proceeding to first reading. So essentially, this would invite the public to provide input earlier within the process. If council chooses to hold a public hearing, the public would be invited to provide input prior to third reading of the amending bylaw. Page 8 of the staff report shows how council's decision regarding a public hearing will impact the timelines in the processing of this application. So with respect to this application, staff are recommending that council consider amending the bylaw to permit medical and professional offices on the ground floor of buildings fronting Common Street, and to bring forward the amending bylaw for first, second, third reading and adoption. Other options that you may wish to consider are option 2, which is the staff recommendation plus the requirement to hold a public hearing. Option 3, which is to defer the application for further information. Or option 4, which is to deny the application. Thank you. I'm available for questions if you have any, and the applicant is also here tonight to give a presentation and answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. So sorry, are you doing a presentation? Yeah, then coming up.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, councilors, staff, thanks very much for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Matthew Davis. I'm the Vice President of Development for Pacific Capital Real Estate Group. We're the sister company to Gablecraft Homes. Our group is responsible for developing the commercial and the multifamily at Royal Bay. So as Desiree mentioned, this evening we're discussing Area 2 in the CD28 zone, and specifically the subject property, the north border of Area 2, where currently retail stores are the only permitted uses on the first story of any building fronting that north parcel line, and professional and medical offices are prohibited on the first story of a mixed-use building fronting a street. So the purpose of the application, as Desiree mentioned, is to allow the introduction of offices and professional offices and medical offices to the first story of the mixed-use building fronting a street in CD28, and specifically in Area 2. We believe the intent of the application is consistent with the planning principles and vision for Royal Bay for a number of reasons, which I'll discuss. We are aware that the exclusion of these uses could have unintended consequences for who the tenants ultimately end up being at Royal Bay, and I'll expand on that a little bit further, and how we came to this amendment application. So I won't go through every point one by one on this slide, but I'll just talk to kind of high level why we made this application. So kind of concurrently, we're leasing the property across the street, which is the retail village, where we have about 75,000 square feet of retail, of which we have committed tenants of about 50 to 55,000 square feet. One of the challenges we're having is with the second floor space. That's the space that we haven't had any offers on leases. And we have a number of professional office and medical users that would like to be on the ground floor. They, similar to the more traditional retailers, require visibility, exposure to pedestrian vehicle traffic, to promote their brand. So there's been significant interest from these groups, and they'd like to be on the ground floor. I think one of the concerns we have is that if we don't allow these users, we don't have anywhere to accommodate them at Royal Bay. And we do have interest from other retail users, but our goal here has always been to try to develop this complete community where everyone can have access to all the services they need. So and we feel that the form and character of the building, regardless of whether it's one tenant taking the entire space on the ground floor or multiple tenants, will be at the design of the building will be at the staff's discretion, and will be up to their approval. So just included a few excerpts from some of the planning documents and how our application fits with these, which is Latoria South to provide the center for daily activity for the Royal Bay neighborhood, everyday commercial needs and services. Focusing our higher density residential, which is in the commons around these services in close proximity to them, and try to establish a pedestrian oriented retail street within the commons that supports these uses. And we understand that's a goal here, is to maintain and build active frontage on the street, as Desiree mentioned in her presentation. So like I said, through the CD28 zoning, via design features to present it to staff at the DP stage, the intent is to achieve this pedestrian oriented experience on Common Street. Finally, just the opportunity to build local economic activity and have business opportunities for local residents who operate these businesses and want to be at Royal Bay, and our buyers and our prospects and our people living at Royal Bay what they're asking for, and try to give them what they're looking for. So I just included a couple examples. This one's taken from River District, which is a master plan community in Southeast Vancouver. It's a 130-acre community, and this is a photo of their high street that goes through the community, where they, I think, have done a good job with the design of the building to accommodate users like RMTs, physio, and dentists. And our intent would be to do something similar. Also, District North Vancouver. This is Northwoods Village, insurance provider on the right, where through architectural design, the use of glazing, we think have really created that frontage that we would be looking for. So I invite you to share any questions, and again, thank you for the time.
Thank you. So council, we do have a recommendation, but this has not come to committee. So what I'm going to look for is, I do not want statements. I'm looking for questions first. And then once questions are done, I'll look for a motion, and then you can say how you feel about things. So I'm only looking for questions right now. Councillor Jansen, then Baxter, and then I'll go through the list. Councillor Jansen.
Yeah, thank you. So I was going to move the recommendation. I guess I won't now. But,
yeah, please don't, because we have lots of questions.
So I think we should be doing everything we can to promote medical offices. So I would concur with that. I do have a concern that
Statements or questions, please.
my concern is in what you said, where you have other people coming forward, and this is, I would like some clarity around this,
Thank you.
Ross, but other people that you're having a tough time renting out the second floor, which is where you might expect some of these professional offices, legal offices, medical offices, computer offices, I don't know. But my image of that ground floor is walk by attractive retail opportunities. And I would love for you to share your vision with us on what you see. Is this going to open the floodgates? And next week we're back dealing with another rezone for an IT firm that wants to take up 4 units on the ground floor, which is not what I believe we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think, sorry, through the chair, Councillor Jansen, thanks for the question. I think, right now, so for this building in particular, we have an offer from a big box retailer to take the entire ground floor, which we don't really think helps with the active frontage. You're gonna have one entrance. We can't architecturally design the building the way we want our Main Street or Common Street to look. So unfortunately, that's kind of one of the options we're dealing with right now. I think that in reality, we're not going to get 20,000 square feet of office. There just isn't the demand for that. I think this is to accommodate, the one physio, one dental practice. We haven't seen interest from a lot of like an IT, law firm, accounting as an example. So I think we're going to have to do a really good job working with staff to, design the building architecturally, to create that spillover out onto the street, that activity. And I think a lot of these retail users are huge traffic generators. So it does bring a lot of people to that area. The chiros, the physios, they do see a lot of people in and out all day. And I think that the traditional retailers just aren't there as much as they were. I mean, obviously retail's changed a lot over the last 10, 20 years, and even more so in the last 2. So I think, how we ensure the building has that active frontage is working with staff from a form and character perspective to design the building.
Yeah, thanks, boss. Thank you. Councillor Baxter, then Day.
This is a question for planning staff. The requirement for retail stores only on the ground floor also it creates a requirement that there be no residential on the ground floor. If the changes proposed are made, is there still something in the bylaw that prevents residential on the ground floor?
Ms. Givens?
Through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Baxter. I think if, so item 2A of the bylaw currently states that retail stores are the only permitted uses on the first story of any building fronting the northern parcel line. So if we wanted to, what we could do is we could amend the item 2A as well, similar to how we're amending 2B, so that it's clear that residential uses would not be permitted. It would only be uses that include professional medical offices or retail uses as well.
Great, then that's what I'll be proposing when the opportunity arises. Thank you very much.
Is that it, Councillor Baxter?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Councillor Day?
Thank you. In your presentation, you showed 2 pictures of developments, one on the North Shore in Vancouver and one in the southern extremities of Vancouver. And in both of those pictures, there are no pedestrians. It's a bright sunny day. So, I mean, your pictures show me what I have already witnessed in neighboring municipalities where they've had they've come up against the same difficulties. So in their earlier stages of development, they did exactly what you're proposing. They put in, the chiropractors and the physiotherapists and dentists are also there. And those areas still have very little pedestrian traffic as a result, because the people who come there, like in your photos, you can see 3 cars parked right in front of the businesses and not one person walking by on the street. So I'm really hoping that you can bring forward a vision that includes a toy store, a bookstore, a cafe, even if it's a small one, where there's something for the residents of the area to be interested in and take the time to walk along those storefronts. And where I've seen them be the most successful has been where they've co-created a group of similar, and I mean, I'm not prescribing what business you would choose, but if you had, you know, clothing stores of different styles and types, that's successful. If you look at Sydney, for example, here, they revitalized their main drag by co-creating those residential supporting businesses together on different parts of the street. There's one part of the street that's about books and hardware. There's another part of the street that's about clothing and gift shops. There's, you know, there's a vision for that's driving people to want to go check it out. And as much as I'm very supportive of dentists and chiropractors and physiotherapists operating in our community, this might not be the right place. So I'd be interested to know if you've considered those options, like what, you know, what makes people really want to walk down your street? Bramble Island makes people want to walk there.
Through the chair, if I may respond, thank you, Councillor Day. I think part of us would love to have all those uses. We've been marketing the retail village for about 6 months ish, which is the 75,000 square feet I mentioned. And we haven't seen any interest from any of those users. And I don't know if that's a post-COVID challenge. A lot of retailers got hit hard, unfortunately, during COVID. I don't know if that's why, but we haven't, outside of kind of quick service food, daycare, grocery, pharmacy, we haven't seen much other than that office, professional, or medical use. So on the other side of the street, we're talking about the south side of the street. On the north side of the street is where we have our liquor store, daycare, and cafe, like you mentioned. So that will generate a lot of traffic on Common Street. But as it relates to the other side, from what we've done so far and through our marketing efforts, and we're working with Collier's brokerage on it, we just haven't seen interest from anyone. And I think the difficulty is as we move ahead and try to plan and build more residential, we want to get some certainty on kind of whether we're going to have occupied space. And at this time, kind of the only tenant, like I mentioned, outside of those groups is a big box dollar store type tenant that we aren't as keen on. So.
Yeah, I think it may take pointed, what we call proactive marketing to try to find the people. And I do know that several firms have recently approached me who are looking for space that's currently available in Colwood for office storefront uses, and they're not finding it. So there may be a lag between what you're seeing come forward and what will work. So I'm hopeful that something good and attractive can be created. Thank you.
May I respond there?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm not surprised by what you've already found in your marketing right now. I was reading that EDC report about how retailers in general, they're going away from brick and mortar now. And so I'm not surprised. But I do have a question. I guess this is more for staff. At one time, we had recommended that we exclude the professional offices on the ground floor. And there's been a change of heart now. I was just wondering, what has caused that change? Because that's the recommendation.
Through the chair, thank you for that question. It is a great question because when we created the CD 28 zone, it was very much to have a retail centered common street. So the zone was designed to be more forthcoming with urban design, with the expectation that good design would bring that streetscape feel. Which is the intent there. The sub-area plan includes design guidelines for that streetscape, for that integration of the building with the public space. And the zone itself did look at uses and went a step further to limit that professional office in the front or on the ground floor, with the idea being that a lot of offices tend to have screening in the windows, which would limit that sort of interaction with the streetscape. So with the proposal here, there is still a strong proposal for that urban design feel to still get that design between the street to the building. In terms of what the applicant is looking for is really, as they discuss, is the change of the market conditions. So that's what's being reflected here.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Kobayashi, for my first question. Second question, I see on the picture here, Appendix 1, you show a building with 9 CRUs and an entrance to the park. I think we're talking about zoning the whole of Commons Road, though. Not only is, what percentage of the road is covered by this sketch we've got here? Is that like half of the road or a third of the road?
The majority of the road is that one building. Yeah.
Okay. And here's my thinking. I sort of share some of Councillor Day's concerns about the lack of pedestrians in the pictures you showed us and potentially here. And it seems to me that if I had a little coffee shop in the middle of, 2 other buildings, I love the fact that they weren't using their frontage and I could spread out and elbow and have a little bit more room. And so I don't have a particular concern about the usage you're asking for, except if it becomes all that kind of thing, that doesn't work. How do we create something that allows this to happen while still allows a lot of life to happen that we'd like to see there? Like, as I said, a small restaurant that could spill onto the sidewalk in front of the 2 buildings beside it, that kind of thing. How do we word a motion that attracts that kind of stuff? And even if it makes your job a little bit harder, makes a better community in the end, well, we've been criticized for lots of things. One more won't hurt.
I would and perhaps ask that question to staff as well, but whether there's an opportunity to register a covenant on the title where we would commit to not doing more than a certain number of square footage or a certain number of square feet of those uses. I think that's something we would consider.
So something like limiting the frontage to 50% for medical and
Something like
professional
that.
type. Yeah. Thank you.
So sorry to interrupt, Councillor Parkinson. Did you wish to get clarification from staff on that? On the covenant?
I always look for their wisdom. If they have
I'll
any
look to
add.
staff. Sorry to interrupt. Staff, do you want to comment on the covenant?
Maybe I'll just add a little bit more, just to give a bit more background on the area too. There is a proposal for park dedication on the bottom south tip of it, which would be, according to the park's terms of reference, I'm going off memory here, I believe there's requirements for benches and pathways. So through the development proposal for all of Area 2, we'd be looking at opportunities for continued pedestrian integration through the buildings, through the landscape of the building. And that is something that we have discussed with PCRE on several locations. We'd be looking for the ability to move people through that parcel itself, as well as around Area 2 in the streetscape.
Yeah, no, I have confidence in both you and the developer. It'll be a nice place. I just would like to see it actively used, and people in the building would love to run down for a cup of coffee or Vietnamese takeout or whatever. Okay, thank you.
That's it. Okay, Ms. Clark, can you just pull your mic forward too? I know council's having a bit of difficulty hearing you just the next time you speak. Could you just pull your mic closer to you? Awesome, thank you. Councillor Baxter? You
Um,
wanted to
sorry,
make a motion with that?
Oh, is this my chance to actually make a
Yes,
motion?
yeah, this is your chance. I don't have anybody else's hands up, so I will, you said you wish to make a motion with that amendment.
Yes, okay, so I would like to move the recommendation, but with the following changes. That it,
Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt, Councillor Baxter. Are you referring to the staff recommendation? We had 4 options.
oh, yes, sorry. I'm looking in the agenda,
That-
the
okay,
recommendations in the agenda. I'm not
Okay,
looking
thank
at the report, so the recommendation that's given in the agenda, but with the following changes that instead of removing item 2A, item 2A be amended to state that no residential uses are permitted on the first story of any building fronting the northern parcel line of Area 2, and that B be amended to include an exception that will permit professional office and medical office uses on 35% of the first story of a mixed-use building fronting common street. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a seconder to that motion? You are, Councillor Jansen seconds it. Okay, discussion? Councillor Baxter, is your motion, well, you were the mover. Did you wish to discuss it?
Yeah, very briefly, I think I made it clear in my question that we do not want to affect the activity on the street by allowing residential uses at ground floor level. And if we simply removed 2A, it may allow that. So my intent was to make sure that it did not allow residential uses. And then there was plenty of discussion about limiting the total amount of professional and medical office uses to a percentage of the frontage. And I think 35% is an appropriate percentage, although I'm happy to listen to arguments for other percentages. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jensen, then Parkinson, then Kobayashi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can we get some clarity, please, from Desiree, that what exactly does that designation include? I mean, is that physio, chiro? I mean, does it include vet clinics? Is it surgeries? Is it like, is there a laundry list of what exactly that reference it might be or might include?
I believe the CD28 zone does include definitions for medical and professional offices. I would have to double check to confirm, but if it does not, then we could include that in the amending bylaw. That definition, that medical and office professional offices means this, this, and this.
So I guess my concern is I would be, you know, and I think the assigning a certain percentage would probably resolve some of this, but I'd be disappointed to see an entire row of an RMT, a chiro, a pharmacy, a vet clinic, what have you, all in a row. And I think that would take away from the desirability of that area. But has Gablecraft given thought to assigning a medical precinct to a certain area? I mean, I've seen that in other developments where there's a standalone building that includes everything I just mentioned and more.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. We haven't yet at this point. I think where we're found is that we don't have a lot of opportunities in the other parcels to provide these services, and that the demand is somewhat, I don't want to say urgent, but needed sooner. And so that's why we're trying to incorporate it as early as possible without being sure on whether we will be able to put it in another building at a different time. If we will have another retail area, this is where we kind of see that opportunity.
So I mean, I'm in favor of anything to do with promoting some more doctors or medical facility coming to our community. But again, I'd be concerned that that becomes the dominant attraction because you can't rent it to somebody else. I believe, and I'm not in the business, that if you build it, they will come once they see how desirable it is. That so I have faith that these retailers will appear that will be consistent with our vision. And I think you've heard the will of council that we want to see walkability. We want to see operations that attract people to our community or are appealing to our residents. So that's it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wonder if we shouldn't bump the 35% to 50%. That strikes me as perhaps a better trade-off. I'd like to require them to be interspersed, so it's not 50% blank walls and 50% lively walls, but that would get so complicated that I'm going to have to trust our staff and our proponent to all have a vested interest in making it better than I can describe in one motion. So if I could make an amendment to bump the 35% to 50%.
Okay, I will look for a seconder on that amendment. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Logan. So we are now on a new list. Councillor Kobayashi, I will come back to you on the main motion. So I'm just talking about the increase to 50%. So please keep your discussion to that. Do you have anything else? Councillor Day?
So
Oh, sorry, Doug.
I'm just trying to clarify that the 50% is 50% medical and then 50% other, hopefully pedestrian oriented businesses.
Correct.
So I won't be supporting the motion. I do understand that you need anchor tenants, but I also think that there needs to be some targeted marketing for things that will draw people. Gelato, you know, I'm telling you, there's some places that have done some really good re-envisioning. Comox is another one. They have a seniors home, and the bottom floor of their seniors home, they have a little gelato place and a card shop, and it's very busy and it's very successful. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Kobayashi in a moment, but Councillor Baxter, your hand sort of stays up permanently. So I'm never sure if you're wishing to speak or not speak. So are you looking to speak to the motion, or excuse me, to the amendment?
I do wish to speak to the amendment.
Okay, it's not your turn yet.
Okay.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So I have a differing idea. I think everyone's numbers are they may be valid or not valid, who knows? But I just have another suggestion. I'd rather give it back to planning staff, who's got a lot more expertise in this than the collective group of us up here, that's for sure. So my suggestion would be just to send it back to staff to come up with that percentage it should be, you know, to make it right. I mean, I don't have any planning expertise whatsoever, so I don't know if 35% is good, 50% is good, 20% is good. I don't know. So that's my comment, Your Worship.
Okay, so what I will do is, if this motion at 50% fails, I will come back to you to make that motion. Councillor Baxter?
Yeah,
Logan.
I'm afraid I can't support the amendment because the proponent, Councillor Parkinson, has made absolutely no arguments, no persuading to indicate why 50% would be better than 35. And the one advantage I can point to for starting at 35% is that the proponent can always come back and have that increased if it seems like it's really necessary. But the other reason to stick with 35% is that although a medical professional clinic might have a few people every hour coming for appointments, I think compared to a coffee shop, it's probably got a very small number per hour coming. So I think 35% would not overwhelmingly reduce the amount of pedestrian traffic, whereas 50% might be a bit too much of a reduction in pedestrian traffic. So I'll be opposing the amendment.
Great, thank you. Councillor Baxter, can you drop your hand now?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Councillor Logan, then Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. I initially support the 50%, of course, but I take Councillor Kobayashi's point in that I'm not sure what the unit configuration would be, but man, if a couple of businesses came in and said, you know what, we need 52%. Are we hamstrung? You know, does that deny future tenants? So, you know, I'm wondering if there's a degree of flexibility in there that, so we don't have to undergo the rezoning process again for 2 more percentage points, you know, to make sure that we can accomplish and fit in these prospective tenants. So I, you know, maybe through you to staff, is there a way to build in some flexibility that, you know, we need to go over a percentage or two, it's okay, as opposed to going through this whole process again?
Ms. Gibbons or Ms. Clark, who would like to speak to that? Ms. Clark, how about you?
Off the top of my head, I cannot think of this specific wording, but I do believe we can come back with some specific wording that could be even included in a section 219 covenant for that. So we can come back with more information.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, and I'll try to persuade my colleague, Councillor Baxter, that there's at least some method to my madness. This is a development that we've talked about and studied forever, and I think have come to some real good decisions on. And one of those decisions was that this part of the world was going to be retail and retail only. And, you know, when we looked to our staff, that's what they told us the time would be great. We're now hearing from the proponent, and our staff has had a chance to vet all this, saying, well, no, maybe we should allow it to be professional and medical offices. They didn't put a cap on that. So I think, listening to my colleagues and from my own thoughts, that 100% medical and professional offices would be nowhere near what we originally wanted. So here we have something that we've looked at, we've agreed, we've been told it doesn't work. I think that the 50% compromise is going to give opportunities for the non-medical professional places to thrive and give us as much perhaps of the liveliness and street presence as we're all hoping will occur. So I think it's a little bit to say, we don't know, it should be 35 or it should be, you know, 52 or whatever it should be. I think we have a number. I'll bet you a bunch of money that the developer would like more flexibility. You know, we probably have some who go, we chose 100% retail before, we should stick to our guns. I believe this is a good compromise. It'll give him the flexibility to fill it up, give opportunities for both what he says he needs and what we'd like to see. So I amended your motion, Councillor Baxter, because I thought that the sort of 35 1/3 didn't sound at all like the 100% that he came in here asking for, and that the 50%, while it may not be perfect, maybe is the best of both worlds, or as close as we're going to get. So I don't know if that's convinced you or not, but I did want to at least say that there was some thought behind my number. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. The amendment is basically just to move it from 35% to 50%. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. I have Councillor Day, Councillor Kobayashi, and Councillor Baxter. So that motion passes. So that brings us back to the main motion. Councillor Kobayashi, you had your hand up on the main motion. Do you still wish to speak? Oh, so there you go.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yes, I still think, don't you just love civil engineers arguing? I guess that's why they call them civil engineers, because they were very civil. Anyways, the point I was trying to get to is that, like I said, I'm still not convinced 35, 50, maybe it's 80. I don't know. The market determines this, right? It's the market. I understand this more than anyone here. I really do understand this. So, and I was hoping that we give this to staff to somehow wordsmith this so that there is a little more flexibility. Maybe it's 20. I don't know what that number is, but I mean, listening to the civil engineers here, I mean, I'm not convinced of either argument because it was just a number that was pulled out of the air, but with good grounds. I must admit, they had the reasoning, but to me, I'm just still thinking, who are we to dictate these numbers? It just doesn't seem right to me. We said we're supposed to go to our expert staff here, and they'll be working with you, of course. And I think, the wording has to be around, so it gives us, you a little more flexibility on this. But that's my recommendation, that we don't prescribe a number right now. Let the staff come back, and we've got time to do this. So let's do this properly. So
I think you still have that ability to make that motion if you wish.
So I'd like to make that motion. Look at Marcy.
Just,
okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
I just want to get it right for you. So to clarify, Councillor Kobayashi is looking for staff to bring back a report suggesting the right number of density. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Councillor Kobayashi. If I'm not, Ms. Clark, if you have a better.
If I can just speak to it quickly, in order for us to determine what that right number is, we would actually work and engage with the applicant. So perhaps the applicant may, if you have anything that you can provide council to help with that, otherwise we'd be happy to go back and work on this and bring it back to council.
Yeah, to that point, thanks, Carrie. To that point, Councilor Kobayashi, I think our thought was to leave it as flexible as possible. And if the market, like you say, determines that it's 70%, then that's what we would be looking to do, so that we didn't, commit to a building that we couldn't lease. So, we're open to working with staff on kind of what that number is, and can provide kind of that feedback from going out to the market. But I think that, what we're intending is just to kind of get as much flexibility, to your point, as possible, to get the market to tell us what it's looking for.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say, I guess, in not so many words here, is that it's I just read, like I said, the recent EDC report, and I mean, it doesn't bode well for retail anymore. I mean, everyone's going online, and in fact, everyone is spending, provincial, federal government is spending more money to get retail to go online now, and so it kind of worries me that the ones that are actually moving into that brick and mortar are actually the Amazons, which is the opposite of what you'd think, but they've got their own strategies. So to me, it's not a good thing for you to build all that potential retail space down there to only find out, you can't fill it. It's not doing us any good as city, or the citizens, and it's not doing you any good. So it's a lose-lose situation. That's how I look at it. It's the way that I always look at things is that, business is going to, your customer base is going to, certainly give you that demand, and what that is. And, if it is bookstores and coffee shops and things like that, so be it. That's great. That's what we'll strive for. But it's so hard to predict right now, and, when the way the world is going right now. So that's why I think we should be trying to give you as much flexibility as possible, because it's in our best interest for you to fill it, and it's in your best interest to fill it. But we don't want to make it that easy for you either. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Kobayashi, did you wish to move a motion? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I guess what I'm looking for is a staff recommendation. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to refer this to staff to come back with a recommendation on this, hearing what I'm suggesting right now. It's going to allow that, so it's a win-win situation for everyone. I don't know what that is. I don't have that solution right in front of me right now, but you're a lot smarter than we are.
Okay, so I have heard a motion to refer. Do I have a seconder? Moved by Councillor Logan to second it. No discussion. I'll call the question. Those in opposition to deferral? Councillor Parkinson, Mayor Martin, Councillor Baxter, and I believe that's it. So the referral passes. All right, thank you. All right, moving on to 6.2. This is Mr. Borhill, Director of Community Planning, regarding the Prosperity Round Table meeting.
Thank you, Worship. This evening, we're asking for council direction on the format of the city's Prosperity Roundtable meeting program. First of all, I'd like to thank Nora Brooks, Executive Assistant, for compiling the staff report and coordinating the roundtables. The quarterly economic roundtable meeting series was initiated by council as a means to establish regular meetings with the city's business and development community. The city has hosted 7 roundtable meetings since mid-2020, all of which were held virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The average attendance over this period was approximately 14 participants per meeting. However, there were a couple meetings that were canceled due to low attendance during the summer and holiday season. Staff are proposing that the program shift away from a quarterly virtual lunchtime meeting to an in-person luncheon and be held twice a year in the spring and winter. This would avoid the summer period that has been seeing lower interest. Staff are also proposing that the city partner with the Chamber of Commerce to more deeply collaborate on promotion and facilitation of the roundtable series. I also note that staff is bringing forward a report next month that looks more broadly at the prioritization of economic development actions flowing from the business retention, expansion, and attraction project. Staff have also been in conversation with the West Shore Chamber of Commerce to also hold more informal off-site coffee talks that the Chamber co-hosts as part of their normal operations as pandemic-related restrictions. Lastly, I'll note that $2,000 has been allocated in the 2022 city budget to cover the external expenses such as catering associated with the Prosperity Roundtable meeting series. That concludes my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen.
I'll support or move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Day. Discussion? Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'll support the recommendation, but what I was maybe going to suggest here is that I would love to see the BRIA report, and I think we're getting that within the next month, if I remember right. And if that's the case, I think it'd be more appropriate at that time to decide on, you know, when we should meet and the number of times we meet. I think we may be premature in making some of these decisions right now until we see that. That's just my feeling. I'm just wearing the hat of when I was president of the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, we are sort of crossing paths right now a lot with what the Economic Prosperity Committee does and what the Chamber does. And at that point in time, I think that we should actually relook at the mandate of the Economic Prosperity Committee, because, you know, it was extremely useful. And I know that from the feedback that we got from the in our COVID recovery, that was an extremely important committee. Lots of feedback, lots of great feedback in the end. But that's how I feel right now at this point in time. I think that we may be just a little premature in deciding what we're going to do here. You know, if it should be semi-annually, or if we should continue on quarterly, or if it should be an annual meeting. So that's just my recommendation.
Thank you. I have a question to staff. Does this motion still allow for a meeting to be called at the discretion of the chair?
Thank you for that question, Your Worship. The Prosperity Roundtable meeting series is an informal one in the sense that they're not council meetings or committee meetings per se. They are city events that include both council members and staff, as well as members of the business and development community that self-identify as such and RSVP. So we could certainly see a scenario where council makes a resolution to add a meeting to the program as time goes by. But we're essentially trying to program an annual set of meetings such that we could plan ahead.
Okay, but what I'm hearing from you though is that doesn't preclude us having a third or fourth meeting or an extraordinary meeting if necessary.
Certainly at the request of council, we could put that together.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.3, this is Ms. Lalonde, our Manager of Corporate Services, regarding consideration to bring forward a public notice bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Oh, maybe that's not too close. That better? On February 28th, Bill 26 for public notice amendments came into force, and these amendments gave local governments the flexibility to adopt bylaws to provide for alternative means for publication. So in an effort to modernize public notice requirement, our goal is to ensure that residents are informed of decisions that affect them in the best way possible. So due to the legislative requirements in the paper that we currently use, which is the Goldstream Gazette, being only weekend or weekly, public noticeability is sometimes limited. If council chooses to adopt a public notice bylaw, they will have the ability to determine notice requirements regarding a matter, including if it's by internet or other electronic means. So if council chooses to adopt a public notice bylaw, local governments must publish notice by all methods that are specified within the bylaw, and they're still required to post a notice in the public notice posting location, which is in our foyer. So the bylaw, if adopted, must specify at least 2 methods, not including the public notice posting place, and consider the principles of effective public notice being reliable, suitable, and accessible. So attached to the report is a sample bylaw, and within the bylaw, staff determined that the 2 methods that would be most appropriate would be to continue with the newspaper along with the city website. And so you know that with the upcoming election, the changes that are in here, of course, we would have to follow that. But in addition to that, we would be doing extra additions because we also do joint publication with other municipalities within the region. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day.
If we could, I'm not seeing it handily here, but by changing to using the website, the issue is not everyone is online, despite the fact that many people are. There are a number of people in the community who regularly contact me because the website is not available to them and ask me to relay to them what's going on. So the only option other than having to know your local councillor would be the newspaper. And I know that it has been problematic at times if it hasn't made the newspaper, it got bumped, or it didn't get into the requirements. But I think we need another method that doesn't rely on the internet. Is there another method in your plan?
The bylaw includes the method of the newspaper as well as our website. So the primary method would be the website and the secondary would be the newspaper. Both must be done. So the difference now would be essentially for a public hearing. Previously, it was 2 consecutive editions of the Gazette. If we did it this way, it would only require to be put in once.
Mm-hmm. I can't support the once because the twice was iffy and we missed it. I think we should be trying to put it in more, but maybe not having to cancel or reschedule a public hearing simply because one didn't work. So in effect, the default would be twice, but if it only once happened, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But I think that it's very problematic because at one time going into the newspaper, it could be missed. It could be missed by the public not noticing it, but it could also be missed by the newspaper not publishing it. Thanks.
Councillor Parkinson, then Baxter, then Jansen. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. So I guess there have been problems with using the newspaper twice, but could they be alleviated by if there's an issue going to the Times Colonist, even though it's a little more expensive?
Currently, that is our process that we have at times had to use the Times Colonist in addition to in order to meet the timelines. Previously, it wasn't as difficult because the Gazette used to have the two editions, the Wednesday and the Friday, so it was a little easier. Now that it's only weekly, it can cause some issues. And just so you know, too, I have the communications manager available if you have any questions on that.
I assume everything goes on the website no matter what. So essentially what we're talking about is one less ad in the Goldstream Gazette.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
My first question is about what triggers the notice, what the notice is intended for. Because as I understand it, the change in the charter or the Local Government Act is that a public hearing is in certain circumstances are no longer required. So would this bylaw speak to providing notice to the public even if there is no public hearing?
Current legislative requirements, even when there's a cancellation of a public hearing, that still has to be published through notice. Does
Okay,
that answer your question?
I don't think so. So if there is to be no public hearing, would this bylaw still require notice to be given? Not notice that there is no public hearing, but notice that there is an application for rezoning or whatever it is.
If it required a public hearing, correct. But if it does no longer, based on the new requirements right now, what we're doing is, I think for every application that comes forward, council is given the option whether or not to hold a public hearing if one isn't not required. But if one is required, we would have to publish it. And if there was one required, we would have to, like, say, a change to the OCP. We would still have to publish notice if, well, we couldn't waive it for that, but we would still have to publish notice. Cancellations.
I'm not sure I'm following the situation properly, but it sounds to me anyway, as if you're saying that if there's no public hearing, then there's no notice, and we don't tell the public that there's a bylaw proceeding, other than through the means of publishing an agenda.
Correct.
Okay, well, I personally would like to see a requirement in the bylaw that notifies the public that there is a bylaw coming forward, whether or not there is a public hearing. And desperately trying to, because I'm doing this remotely, I don't have the paper copy, and so I'm trying to find the recommendation that is in front of us. And I think the recommendation is simply to instruct staff to prepare a bylaw. Is that correct?
Correct. A draft bylaw has been prepared and it's attached as an attachment to the staff report.
So Councillor Baxter, I'll just read the just for your benefit. The recommendation from staff is that given the principles of effective public notices, reliable, suitable, and accessible, as described in the public notice regulation, that a draft public notice bylaw be brought forward that provides the following two methods of notice: newspaper, published once, at least 7 days before the matter, and two, city website, which would be the primary method of notice, is the recommended staff recommendation.
Your worship, if I may.
Yes, you may. Did I read that
No,
wrong?
sorry to interrupt.
No.
I'm just gonna have the planning team confirm, but it's my belief if council opts not to have a public hearing, the city must notify that first reading of a bylaw is coming without a public hearing, and we must use the same notification provisions, whatever they be.
So if I can just clarify for everybody then, and for myself. I'm not talking right now about the regulatory issues of if we have a public hearing or if we do not have a public hearing. I am talking about the effective way we are posting a public notice. And I'd hope that we can stay on topic to determine how we are going to be posting the public notice, not the reasons when we should and when we shouldn't. So the discussion point tonight should be the staff recommendation is suggesting that we use the newspaper and the city website. And staff are looking for that recommendation. If that's not what this table wishes, then we can look at a different recommendation. Am I correct? Thank you. All right. So Councillor Baxter, the floor is still yours.
Okay, so I have a question then. Does this draft bylaw deal with when we would issue notice and when we would not issue notice?
No, that's not the issue that we're discussing this evening.
No. So when will we discuss whether we issue a notice or not issue notice?
I'll look to Mr. Earl.
Sorry, the Municipal Act generally governs that rather than the municipality.
Okay, thank you very much.
We're not discussing if, we're discussing how this evening. Councillor Jansen.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to move the staff recommendation, and I believe that a segment of our community still reads the newspaper, and that Goldstream Gazette is the one that comes to our constituents' door. I think the less preferred publication would be the other publication because its circulation is greatly reduced. So I do believe those are probably the two most effective ways to communicate with our public. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Jansen has moved it. Councillor Logan has seconded it. Discussion, Councillor Day, and then Councillor Baxter.
So I just wanted to confirm in the draft and in the report here, it says a newspaper published once at least 7 days before the matter and on the city website, which will be the primary method of notice. So we are not prescribing in this policy which newspaper we use. This could be the Times Colonist, or it could be the Goldstream Gazette, or it could be some other newspaper that comes along in the future. We are talking about that it's published in a newspaper. And I think it's important that we understand that the Goldstream Gazette is delivered less and less in our community. It is no longer coming to the doorsteps of South Colwood for sure. And it's no longer coming to people's mailboxes because most things are going to larger mail rooms or mail super boxes, etc., where there may be kiosks where the newspaper is available for pickup, but there are numerous agents, people in Colwood who regularly receive the Times Colonist, which is the most frequently published, and would give staff options for the date of publication that the Goldstream Gazette might not. So I think it is appropriate that we're saying that it's going in a newspaper and not prescribing which one, because we want it to be 7 days before the matter comes to council, that notice is given to people. And this is just regardless of whether there's a public hearing or not a public hearing, we're letting the public know what's happening in Colwood. And I think that is a good thing. I would prefer that we did it sooner or more often with the newspaper, because not everybody reads the paper every single day of the week. That's just my preference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson.
Along the same lines, I think I would support twice in the newspaper and the other methods that we're talking about here, just to make sure we have as broad a sweep as possible. I hear what Councillor Day says about the Times Colonist being perhaps a more relevant newspaper than the Goldstream Gazette, but Goldstream Gazette's a little more local, so I'd hate to cut them out completely. So I guess I would move the
We already have a motion.
I would move an amendment
Yeah.
that says that it'll be in newspaper twice.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Oh, Marcy, yeah.
I was just going to state that if that was the case and we put it in twice, then that would be the default provisions and that would be no bylaw coming forward using the default provisions that were already in existence.
So are you suggesting then that perhaps if people wish for it to be twice in the paper, they should just defeat this motion?
Then we don't bring forward a public notice bylaw.
Councillor Day?
There's a misunderstanding there because the current regulations say twice in the newspaper, but a week apart. What we're saying is that needs to be twice in the newspaper. So you might advertise Wednesday in the Gazette and Friday in the TC, and you would still meet the requirements of our bylaw that we're bringing forward, which is a little bit different than the province's bylaw or rules, I guess is the right word for it, where they had to be 7 days apart. So you had 2 different weeks.
Okay, so what are you looking for that amendment? Did you want to make that an amendment still, or did you wish to? Sorry, yes, you would like to, you do want to move with the amendment still? Okay, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Day. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition. Councillor Logan, Councillor Jansen, and Mayor Martin opposed. The motion passes. So it is now twice in the newspaper and the city website. Okay, back to the main motion. Anyone else? I will say that I will speak to this. I would not normally support this. I think this is overkill. I think we are getting into a time period that everyone is shifting to electronics. I hear what council has said, that some people do not have that ability, but that number is going to continue to decrease. It will not be increasing. And we are always attempting to try to save money wherever we can. And this is just an additional cost, which I think is unnecessary. So, but I still will be supporting the motion because I just want to keep this moving forward. Anyone else? Mr. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I would have said the same thing as Your Worship, but I guess I just looked at that number they stuck in the data here. The number of people that are registered on our City of Colwood website, 680. That's pretty small. That's why I thought, geez, maybe just not yet. There's going to be a time, and I agree with your thought process on that. But it's just that if we had a few more, maybe 6,000, I would totally support. So, anyways, I'm just making that comment. Thank you.
Sorry, excuse me. I'm going to call the question again because I didn't have my mic on so the public could hear. Call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. So we're going to now move on to bylaws. 7.1. This is bylaw number 1898, land use bylaw amendment, cannabis retail, 1905 Souk Road. The recommendation is this is for adoption. May I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to bylaw number 7.2, bylaw number 1919, Colwood Land Use Bylaw Number Amendment CD 22, Zone 3460 and 3461 Veterans Memorial Parkway. This is for third reading. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Councillor Day.
Thank you. I will be opposing this. I don't feel that the public who live in Colwood has been heard on this matter despite early and extensive input from the community that this was a concern. We had signs posted on both Veterans Memorial Parkway and here on Wishart Road months in advance of this coming forward. We had a petition with more than 1,400 signatures of Colwood residents who were opposed to this. And we have an OCP that says that our environment is very important to Colwood. So important that we both modify how we develop and how we manage the land that is already here, already zoned. So I think it's been very disappointing to me that input has not been consistently considered. And I think the community has overwhelmingly said that this is not what they want. We have numerous people who have taken great efforts to give their opinions to council about the impacts that this development will have both on our Havenwood Park and the trees that are in it and the trees that surround it. And the environment is important to our quality of life. Thank you.
It'll be Councillor Jansen, then Parkinson, then Baxter. Councillor Jansen.
Hey, thank you, Your Worship. First off, I do apologize to this group that and to the public in general that I did miss the public hearing that was scheduled. I did want to declare publicly that firstly, I've watched the meeting in its entirety from beginning to end. I've heard what everybody had to say. And I've also read the public hearing report, which we received tonight. So I've done my due diligence. I've sat here, I've listened. I've been back and forth a little bit on this project, but quite frankly, I am going to support it. And I'm going to support it for a handful of reasons, which I'm just going to gloss over. First off, previous councils that went before us opted to not attempt to try and acquire this land. I mean, that's not a decision of this council, nor is it anything that we can have an impact on. That has come up along the way, and I've heard people speak to that. And unfortunately, those decisions were taken historically, and really, you know, that's not for us to try and repair at this point in time. However, one of the main factors for me is that we'll be able to make somewhere around a 4-acre plus contribution to Havenwood Park. And I think that's a generational opportunity. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And that is something that this council can do and can action. Density. We've heard lots about density, and my mind has been changed since I've been at this chair for, you know, going on 3 to 4 years now, that density is a new reality. It's coming. It's coming to your neighborhood. If it's not there, it's coming to your neighborhood. It's coming to my neighborhood. We have an opportunity to place some density here near to a park. We're hearing from park professionals telling us that density near parks is desirable. It's desirable to promote healthy lifestyles for those that may not have a large lot like probably most of us do or have at this table at one point in time. So the density located within walking distance of these amenities, these community amenities, is important. I've heard much about density and destruction of park. Well, I believe, I don't have the numbers to prove this, but just visually by looking at the density at the other end of the park off Latoria Road, far exceeds this density that we're discussing here. And I'm sorry, but that south side of the park is not a wasteland. I walk it regularly. I believe that those people care for and respect the park as much as anybody else. So I'm not sure that I would expect anything less from people moving into a development on the north side of the park. If density destroys parks, I would argue that Central Park in New York shouldn't exist. The Stanley Park in Vancouver next to the West End, which is a very dense part of Vancouver, Stanley Park should be a wasteland. And it's not a reality. So it isn't realistic. And I don't accept some of those arguments. I believe that allowing new residents to live in a densified development, the opportunity to enjoy the parks is a responsibility that we have for our future residents. We do speak for the people that are here today, but we also speak for those who are coming to our community and providing them with similar opportunities. I was invited to this community 19 plus years ago with open arms. And I intend to be that welcoming to people coming behind us. And I believe that there's a lot of fear mongering over density. And I know that this community struggled with previous densification in and around not far from here, Painter Road development. And I believe I haven't heard one person speak to me about that development since I've been here. So I don't think density is something to be feared. I think it's something that we should embrace as a new reality to offer opportunities to our young people, young families, and people coming to our community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't remember. Did I see you or Councillor Baxter first? I couldn't remember. I will go with Councillor Baxter, then Parkinson, then Logan.
I support a great deal of what Councillor Jansen said, and I think he said it very effectively, and therefore I don't have a lot to add. But in direct counter to Councillor Day's remarks, I want to say that the current zoning will clear cut, lay waste more land than the proposed zoning. So I do not see how a vote against this proposal can possibly be considered anti-environment. A vote for this proposal is to save more of the native vegetation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. I didn't participate in the discussions we had earlier about the validity of the public hearing report. I thought the public hearing report reported the public hearing very well. I had no issues with it. I have no issues with the lack of getting petitions at this council, and it's not petition, it's petitions. I understand that both the for and the against sides created significant petitions. I'm sure our staff is well aware of that and helped form their opinions. I don't have an issue with how long the proponent was given to speak at the public hearing. I think that's only appropriate. As we know, this has generated a lot of interest in our community, and giving them a chance to present their case was appropriate, and I support the mayor's decision on that. There was a little kerfuffle about the trails that are built out there, and I like the trails that are built out there. I see they're doing a good job. I see the developer on his previous projects has done a nice job. That's all good. I will dispute a little bit my colleague Councillor Jansen, who says this council has the opportunity to acquire the extra land for Havenwood Park. Well, that is actually baked into the existing zoning. I think we have to give the credit for that land to previous councils. As much as politicians, we like to take credit for everything we can. In fact, the addition to Havenwood Park was a commitment the previous rezoning, and the requirement to dedicate land for the waterway is again a given, that not one that we should take much credit for. I note that there has been a lot of work done on restoration plans, which indicates to me that it's not, these aren't leave alone plans or sacred lands. These are lands that will be affected by development, but the developer has gone to great lengths to propose restoration there. I think this is too much, too close to the park myself. I don't see a huge benefit to the city. I don't put any relevance to the talk we've heard recently of provincial initiatives to promote more housing and more supply. I think the province, when it delves into it, will sort of write a policy that says all communities should do what Colwood has already done. We heard the mayor talk about our non-market housing. We have lots of rental housing. We have zoned and active projects that will allow us to achieve our OCP proposed density of 2038. We're well ahead of the game. So you know, and we can argue forever what's density and how it matters and where it should be. But if you know, one of the things that seems to ring true is the population growth and what it's going to be, and we're well ahead of that curve. So there is no need here. I'm concerned that while I like the look of the plans the developer proposed, the curvilinear buildings, the green walls, the solar on the roof, that's not baked into the bylaw that we're voting on tonight. So at some point in the future, when it's time to proceed on this project, the proponent at that time will look at what's baked into the zoning and says, that's what I have to meet. And that, you know, other stuff I may or may not decide to do may or may not make sense to me, what I'm doing at that point. So, you know, the things like seeing the, you know, if the 21 lots is going to create a wasteland and the 6 stories going to be all unicorns and rainbows is doesn't ring true to me. You know, we heard people in the audience saying, is there something else? Why is this the right solution? What is, you know, what's in between, and what's the best way to really approach this? And I don't think I'd heard a satisfactory answer to this. So I just can't see the benefit to the city from this project. And so I won't be supporting this bylaw.
Councillor Logan, then Kobayashi.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting the bylaw, and I absolutely 100% understand the value of that park. I was on council actually that 22 years ago, who was opposed to the mayor's view at the time to develop part of that property in order to get the remainder of it for nothing. From the province when the VMP was constructed. Ultimately, the majority won, and we purchased that 40 acres for $500,000, of which the city paid $350,000. I understand the value. I also remember the expectation when the Veterans Memorial Parkway was constructed. And the ultimate vision with it becoming 4 lanes. And in fact, it is built as a 4-lane subgrade all through to Tory Road with the understanding that it would be expanded to 4 lanes and that there would be some density along that corridor. That was my expectation and discussion when we had the debate on the Veterans Memorial Parkway 21 years ago. So this density is not a surprise to me. I would ask who can afford the 21 single family dwellings that are going to be built on this property? Probably not a lot of people. So I think it behooves us in this day and age, where we are trying to build community, that we add density in appropriate places. I take the view that it is not harmful to the park. It is actually providing more eyes and protection for a park, more eyes, more ownership on the park. And as was mentioned before, we're adding to the park. And I noticed that we're not having the same conversation about the Tory Creek Park. That will be receiving just as much, if not more density around it than Havenwood. It's striking, actually. So I think this is, we're a long ways away, and I appreciate the amount of work that staff has done to bring us to this point. I also recognize the amount of misinformation that was circulating within the community that I think informed some of the signatures on that petition, because I'm not receiving the same feedback actually in the community that perhaps some of my colleagues may be. This is not a topic of discussion in my old neighborhood. This is not a topic of conversation that I run into in the grocery store, quite frankly. So I will leave it with this. quote that I heard at another council meeting recently: planting trees is doable. Planting middle-class families is next to impossible. So I think we need to do our part.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi.
Don't you just love council meetings? Great, great discussions, civil discussions again. But you know, respectfully, I do hear what everyone said. I think Councillor Parkinson, you took a little bit of my fire here. So, but you know, it comes down to me. The reason I just can't support this, like, there's one side, you know, I was ready to compromise on this. You know, there was one side I actually absolutely loved. I'm directionally challenged, the west side, I believe it is. That sort of, well, if there was a compromise, I could live with that. But it's the east side I had problems with. I was hoping there was a compromise that, you know, we can go with the missing middle type housing in their townhomes or something, and there's no compromise. And I'm not even saying, even with these rentals that go in there, they're going to be out of touch for the middle class people, I believe anyways. So, you know, the reason it's just a fit thing. And I respectfully, I did hear Councillor Jensen, and he said that, you know, there's Central Park in New York and there's Stanley Park in Vancouver, but we're not a major urban center. You know, let's get realistic. You know, I live on the southern part of the park, and Councillor Jensen lives on the northern side. So I guess the northerners want this and the southerners don't. So, but you know, with all due respect, I mean, I hear what everyone says. I mean, everyone is sort of in their positions, but to me, it's just not a fit there. You know, it's just that part of it. It just doesn't sit well with me, and you know, and that's the big reason I just can't support it. It's just, you know, maybe I do walk it. I do walk it a lot. I still don't see you, Gordy, and every morning. So I guess that's why I just couldn't support it. I was hoping there would be some type of compromise, and there wasn't. So, you know, I can't support this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will I'll speak to it and then I'll call the question. I will be supporting this bylaw. I would like to explain my rationale of why I'm supporting this project and present my opinions on some of the concerns raised by the members of the public and by some members of this council, and why I take a different view. First of all, allow me to say that I have found most of the comments and opinions both for and against this project respectful. I agree that our community is best served when there are diverse opinions. It's healthy for our community and council to have a reasonable debate on the validity of projects such as this. I also understand that this is an emotional issue for some. I've attempted to look at it from that standpoint to help myself understand some of our residents' concerns. Saying that, I have also been incredibly saddened and discouraged by the vitriol comments of some members of the public directed at specific councillors and staff. I have read social media posts by members of our community that were uncalled for, and for what I would consider bullying. I've read comments that have had absolutely nothing to do with this rezoning, but instead was designed to insult and embarrass members of this council. I have read correspondence to staff that I consider belittling. I would like to reinforce that we can disagree with each other and still be kind at the same time. These are not mutually exclusive in an argument. So why am I supporting this bylaw? First of all, I'd like to make several statements that I consider facts. The first is this development will have an environmental impact. How can it not? This development is already approved on the west to impact 60% of the land base. This developer is entitled to build 21 single-family homes today without council's comment. I believe it is our duty as council to look to professional advice. That is why the city hires professionals to give council this type of advice. I consider the city fortunate to have as our CAO, Mr. Earl, our approving officer, Ms. Clark, and our planner, Ms. Hernandez, to give us the best professional opinions on this project. These individuals have signed the reports that have led to this bylaw, and since their signatures are on these reports, I consider the information in these reports accurate. This project does fit within the OCP It says so in the report, and in fact would require an OCP amendment if it did not. The zoning of CD 22 for the 21 single-family homes has a buffer of 1.5 meters from the Havenwood Park property line. The project that is before us creates a buffer of 10 meters from that property line. This proposed project expands Havenwood Park by 10% or by 4 acres. The 21 single-family homes would expand the park by 3 acres. So there are several issues that I would like to address. These are, does this fit the OCP? The answer is yes, it does. Does this fit our active transportation goals? I believe it does. Does it fit more attainable housing? Does it create more attainable housing than 21 single-family homes? Absolutely. Does this project create much needed commercial space? Yes, it does. Does this project create a larger buffer for Havenwood Park than the present zoning? It does. Does this fit with the principles of site adaptive planning? It does. Does this project save more trees than the 21 single-family homes? We have seen that there will be a 38% disturbance of the land versus 60%. Does this create much needed housing that both the federal and provincial governments have stated is needed? I would also like to point out the obvious in regards to Bill 26. If this project is rejected, could there be a chance that lower density is built? There could be. It could also be that Bill 26 is empowered by the province to make the city build larger. That number could be higher than what this project is. So rejecting this project does not guarantee a future lower density. And finally, the health of the park. It's been an interesting conversation about if our parks are designed for conservation, where we need to keep people out, or is our parks designed for residential use? Havenwood is that unique blend where we encourage residents to use the park and to stay on the pathways and out of the conservation areas. That is a challenge. Even right now, I see unimproved pathways where residents have created their own unauthorized paths. It is a natural thing that residents do. So it will be important that our Parks Department is vigilant to make sure residents continue to stay out of the conservation areas. However, I have not heard an argument that suggests if residents do stay out of the conservation areas of Havenwood, this would have a dramatic impact on the park. I sit on the CRD Parks Committee, and there is always a tension between what I like to call passive recreation, which is walking the trails, full recreation, which could be like mountain biking, and conservation. What I have learned is that this is not an either or proposition. All of those things are achievable if programmed properly. I have lived beside Royal Roads Forest 22 years. If you took just the density of the homes that are directly connected to Royal Roads, it would be in the thousands. Add to that that this is a university with a significant number of students, as well as it being a regional destination, the population that has access to walking the Royal Roads properties is in the tens of thousands of people daily. I walk 1 hour a day with my dog on a 5-kilometer path. In the summer, I will sometimes pass 10 to 20 groups of people. On a nice spring or fall day, I may see 3 to 5 people, groups. If it's stormy or gloomy, I may not see anyone. My life experience tells me that this development will not create a highway of people walking through the pass. And if I'm wrong, I will be happy that I am. But that does not mean the park will fail. Our Parks Department will ensure that that doesn't happen. So for these reasons, I will be supporting the bylaw this evening. We've all had an opportunity to speak, so I will call the question.
Point of order,
Sorry,
Your
yeah,
Worship.
Yes, Councilor Baxter.
I'm sorry, but I do have my hand up. Speak a second time if that's feasible.
I would prefer not. Is it?
It's something that Councillor Parkinson reminded me of that was shown at the public hearing and is not
All right.
included in the bylaw.
Go ahead.
So at the public hearing, the developer showed solar panels on the roof of the building. It's my belief that whatever is used by the developer at the public hearing to persuade the public or council to support the development should be included in the final development. So I would like to ask staff for the preferred method for ensuring that those solar panels shown at the public hearing are in fact installed.
Does staff wish to respond to that?
Your worship, thank you for the question, Councillor Baxter. We can certainly add this into the development agreement. So the development agreement will be registered following third reading if that is given tonight. So if you do have an amendment to the development agreement, we can certainly add that.
Do you require a resolution in order to add it to the development agreement?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, then I propose that the solar panels shown at the public hearing be added to the development agreement following third reading.
Sorry, following third reading, sorry, and Councillor Baxter, I will look for a seconder in a moment. I'm personally confused. We are on the bylaw right now. So should I complete the bylaw and then come? Okay, I'm going to complete the bylaw first and then I will come back to you, Councillor Baxter.
Okay.
Okay, could you lower your hand, please?
Yep.
So because it's going to be close, I'm going to call for and against, just so that it gets recorded. So, yes, Councillor Day.
Sorry, since it was raised about the solar panels, I just wish to ask that the presentation that was presented at the public hearing, that all aspects of that presentation, that the development permit be consistent with the presentation at the public hearing, including the solar panels, including the curvilinear architecture.
So we can do all of that post, correct? We're like, I need to pass the bylaw first and then I need to do these amendments, or what am I doing?
Your worship, that is a good question. I would suggest that we keep all the new information. It's not going to be new information. It will be related to the proposal that has already been presented. So at this time, I'm going to refer to my colleague to double check all the requirements of the development agreement. And we'll make sure that are there any?
Yeah, we're not doing anything until we figure it out.
So we can add a condition for solar panels to this development agreement.
Okay, hold on. That's not my question. My question, I have a bylaw in front of me. I want to know if I'm passing that bylaw first before I go to Councillor Baxter and Councillor Day's requests. Is that yes? Because I will pass that and then we can work through these motions. Or do these motions need to be a part of the bylaw that is being passed?
They will need to be part of the bylaw that's passed. So I would suggest we consider the changes to the development agreement prior to third reading. And if everyone's satisfied with
Okay,
that,
so
then
what
consider
do I
third reading.
table? I have already a motion for, am I tabling it? I'm looking to staff. I'm not trying to be bossy here.
Your worship, I recommend you find someone to move tabling the current motion, deal with any amendments to the development agreement, and then lift back up from the table the motion for third.
Okay, thank you. Move to table is Councillor Jansen, then Logan. Thank you. Discussion on tabling? Seeing none. Any in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
So I move that we amend the bylaw to require the solar panels shown at public hearing.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Okay. Okay. that's fine. If I don't have a seconder, oh, okay, I do have a seconder. Okay, second by Councillor Parkinson. Discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I don't want to change Councillor Baxter's amendment, but I just want to expand the amendment to include as presented at the public hearing. So I don't want to pick and choose and pull out solar panels are okay, but if you want to change everything else, that's fine. I want to say that what was presented at the public hearing is what is on the table here tonight. So including the.
So I guess I'm going to look to Mr. Grohl before I look for a seconder.
Your worship, if I could recommend language generally in alignment with the presentation?
Yes, because I guess I just
Oh, sorry, could you go to a mic, please?
So I just want to remind council that the drawings and the renderings that are presented at rezoning, they are not finalized architectural drawings. They are schematics, and there's work to be done for them to become development permit. Finalized architectural detailing on the siding, the color, but if we add the wording generally consistent, there's an expectation that the broad strokes of what you've seen is what you will end up with some refinement, of course, as they meet development permit guidelines, and we work with the applicant to finalize those details.
I guess I'm at a loss. It's very, that's very general. And to me, that leaves a lot of wiggle room. So I guess the amendment that I would propose is that it's generally consistent with what was presented at the public hearing, including solar panels.
Okay, do I have a seconder to the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. So we'll speak to the amendment first, and then we'll speak to the main motion. You guys wish to comment? No? Okay. Anybody? No? Okay. I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Okay, so that goes back to the main motion. Any other discussion in regards to the main motion, which is basically the same motion because we had to modify it. So I have to do it a second time, correct? Because I just had the amendment to the motion. All right, so it's the exact same motion, but now we're on the main part of it. So those in opposition to that motion? Councillor, sorry, just to be clear, this is the same motion that we just passed because you are an amendment to councillors. So it's not the main motion. I just wanted to be clear. Okay, so we're talking about basically what we just talked about, but unfortunately we have to do a second vote. Those in opposition, nobody opposes. So that becomes, so that's there. So now I need to lift it off the table. How do I do that? Oh, thank you. Moved by Councillor Day, seconded by Councillor Jansen. So now the main motion, excuse me, now it's 7.2, which is bylaw number 1919, Colwood Use Bylaw Amendment CD 22, 3460, 3461, Western Memorial Parkway. This is for third reading. Those in favor, please. I'm going to do both because those in favor, Councillor Logan, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Baxter, and Mayor Martin are for. Those opposed, Councillor Parkinson, Councillor Kobayashi, and Councillor Day. Moving on to 7.3, this is bylaw number 1925, Colwood Main Sewer LAS enlargement for 3223 Wishart Road. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none. Councillor, yeah, thank you, Councillor Baxter. Seeing none. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.3. This is Colwood bylaw number 1925, Colwood Main Sewer LAS for 3223 Wishart. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I just did that. My apologies. 7.4, bylaw number 1926, Colwood West Sewer LAS for the same address. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.5, bylaw number 1927, Colwood Main Sewer LAS enlargement for 3504 Wishart Road. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Bylaw number 1928, Colwood South Sewer LAS for the same address. Moved by Councillor Baxter, so I saw your hand up before, and seconded by Councillor Jansen. Thank you. Any discussion? Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 7.7, bylaw number 1929, Colwood Main Sewer LAS enlargement for 3508 Wishart Road. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. This is for adoption as well. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 7.8, bylaw number 1930, Colwood South Sewer LAS enlargement for 3508 Wishart Road. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Seeing none, those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 7.9, bylaw number 1931, Colwood Main Sewer LAS enlargement for 3512 Wishart Road. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 7.10, bylaw number 1932, Colwood South Sewer LAS for the same address. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Seeing none, those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 7.11, bylaw number 1934, Colwood Main Sewer LAS for 598 Heatherly Road. This is for first, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank goodness that we have first, second, and third. Could you imagine if we were having to do first, then second, then third? We'd be here all night. Sorry, that was just my internal voice. 7.12, bylaw number 1936, Colwood Main Sewer LAS for 2456 Souk Road. This is for first, second, and third reading. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan, second by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. And 7.13, bylaw number 1937, Colwood Main Sewer LAS for the same address. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? This is for first, second, and third reading. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Logan. Any in opposition? Nobody opposed. Good night, everybody.